Aloha and welcome to another episode of Maui, Manao. I'm your host, Alan Texeira, and today we will be discussing the 2013 special session with the Maui Senate delegation, Senator J. Kalani English, Senator Ross Baker, and Senator Gilbert Keith Agaran. Senators, thank you so much for joining us today. We would like to discuss special session, which occurred today earlier in the Senate chambers. Can you tell us exactly, or please describe what this special session is all about and what we can expect in the days to come?
Well, the governor had called us back into special session for three reasons. One is to consider a marriage equality bill. There are two collective bargaining bills to fund Unit 10 and Unit 13 that have come over from the House, and an emergency appropriation for Kauai community hospitals, part of the Kauai hospitals that are part of HHSC.
And because we're also meeting, that means that everyone that Governor Abercrombie has appointed since we left in May now have to be confirmed. So I know that my colleagues, they're both chair of committees that have people that are going to be up for confirmation. So there's other things happening as well.
Yes, actually one of the members that my committee, the Commerce and Consumer Protection Committee, considered was an appointment to the Board of Pharmacy. And it was a Maui woman, Mary Jo Keefe, who is serving as a member of the Board of Pharmacy.
So we're in session, we were called in session on the 28th, which is Monday. Today's Wednesday. The Senate just today passed Senate Bill 1, which will now go to the House, and the House will consider it. So actually, I think seems like we're going to move into next week, a little bit of next week as well, for the House to consider it and then come back. So, besides the bill, two other issues, we also take up the appointments, and for many of for the bodies, for the House and the Senate, we also did some minor rule changes, things that we did in the interim, but we need to just codify basically.
And we also have another very important appointment to consider. The hearing will be in the morning, or Thursday morning, before Judiciary and Labor, and that's the recommendation of the Chief Justice for a Maui District Court appointment, and we're very pleased that Lloyd Pullman has been named to that position. It's a family court position, and one that he's been serving as a per diem judge in, and is well suited to that post.
So his confirmation will come up, and the way that works, right, is that the Judiciary Committee hears it, they make a recommendation, they send that to the Senate full body for us to consider. So maybe Friday
we might vote on
issue will
that.
come up for him.
Can we talk a little about special session itself? I mean, the governor convened this one. I don't think a lot of people understand the meaning of special session.
There's different ways that we can come back in. If we get 2/3 of the members of the Senate signing a petition saying we want to come back in, we call ourselves back in. In this particular instance, it was the governor that used his authority to call us back in to consider this issue. But in reality, once we're called in, we can put anything on the table. We're in session, so like in the House, there are some other bills introduced and other measures put forward, but the ones that will move are the ones generally that we have agreement that, okay, this is the one that we're going to hear.
And separately, we have to come back in to confirm judges.
Yes.
We did that
30
earlier
days.
this summer, and now with Lloyd Pullman being appointed by the Chief Justice, we would have had to come back anyway. So we're going to actually get quite a number of things done while we're here.
Excellent.
And with the emergency appropriation, the governor has to send us that message. Otherwise, we're appropriating money into the current budget cycle, and we cannot do that without a request from the governor. And the reason that particular one is important is Maui Memorial Medical Center had actually a little surplus in their line item spending and was able to help bail the Kauai hospitals out. And so with this appropriation, Maui's going to be made whole as well, which is a really good thing, because you never know when something may come up that needs to be addressed at Maui Memorial, and now we will have the resources that we had originally been able to count on to help pay for the things at our hospital.
And I
So-
think we all would have liked to have been on Maui for the big announcement.
Oh,
I think
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, today was a very special day for Maui. They received their designation as a level 3 trauma center. And that's really important because it means that the organization and the staffing is in place, plus the protocols and best practices to make sure that we have the very best trauma services available. And some of those funds to get this designation came from the increase in cigarette tax that we did a number of years ago and put away in a special trauma fund. So I'm glad Maui's getting to use some of those special funds.
Excellent. Senators, we can discuss some of the interim projects that you have been working on thus far. Anything in particular you'd like to bring up?
Well, we've been working on one for transportation. We passed the anti-texting, no
Talking.
cell phone use on the road. But, it was so broad, and the way that the police have been interpreting it. So somebody pulls over on the side of the road to, so they're getting out of traffic to answer a cell phone call or to get maybe to get directions. The police will give them a ticket because they're operating a device while they're in the car. So we're looking at trying to tweak some of that so that it's very clear that, okay, if you're pulling, that's what we want. We want you to pull over. You need to
Yeah.
find your directions, pull over, go onto your device, find the directions that you need to go, and then you're on your way. So we're looking at tweaking that. We're also looking at fixing the part, right now you get a ticket, you must go to court. So the courts are overloaded, and they're telling us, look, you created legislation, you created this by mandating that everybody has to go to court. And I think because it's a criminal, what's the
category, I don't know. what
there's
the
a particular
is.
category that says they must go to court. So we're trying to fix that to say, okay, it's an infraction. You can say, yes, I did this and pay the fine. So, hoping that if we can fix that, then it makes it a little bit easier for people that are, we depend on our devices. We don't want them driving with it and using it. So, when they pull over and they try to deal with this and not go in traffic, they're getting tickets.
We had both Ways and Means and Finance on Maui last week, and one of the places that we went, which is really important since we're talking about transportation, is Kahului Airport. It's really one of the busiest airports. It is the busiest neighbor island airport, and we have some needs in terms of replacing, resurfacing the runway. It's getting a very much needed facelift, both in with our bathrooms, our restrooms, men's and women's, as well as just the comforts to make it a more pleasant experience for our visitors when they come in, or any of us that need to use it to go between the islands. But I was really happy to see that both Ways and Means and Finance took the time to really take a look at what needs to be done at Kahului Airport, and hopefully will, when it comes up and the administration asks for the funds, that both House Finance and Ways and Means will consider that and include it in the budget.
And it was good that the Oahu representatives and senators were there to hear the deputy director from DOT talk about how Maui Kahului Airport is one of the airports that actually makes money,
Yes.
and it actually helps to subsidize the entire system. So when we invest in Kahului Airport, it's an important thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we get over 10,000 people passing through that airport every day, and we need to do improvements to not only the runway, which is mandated by basically the FAA saying we'll shut down the airport if you don't fix
Yeah.
this. We also need to do things like the parking structure and better roads into the airport. Right now, you go through Derry Road, and everybody knows that it gets all the traffic lights. You get bogged up over there. So we're working on those things. We also went to.
Well, I was just going to say the other big project that's going to be starting, I think they're sending out the RFP, has to do with the construction of the consolidated
Yes.
rental
The
car
rental car
facility,
facility.
which will make it a lot easier to sort of move around. You'll have a way that one vehicle can drive around, pick everybody up, and take them to the facility, and not have multiple
Right.
rental car buses trying to clog up.
And that's been a big, a long haul for us to get it to this point. So when they put in the consolidated rental car facilities, the idea is that all the rental car facilities are in one structure going up instead of spread out. It's one bus that goes around. Everybody gets on that one bus and you get dropped off to whichever rental car company you go to. So instead of 7 or 8 buses going around, you have one. And then it helps us to clear up some space at the airport by consolidating all of them and going to a structure going up. So we approved this probably about 6-8 years
Yeah,
ago.
something like that, yeah.
And I think, and right after that, then they'll be able to now put in the new access road that goes past that area for the airport. And I think earlier this summer, they actually opened a portion of that access road on the Kahului side of Hana Highway.
Yeah.
So,
And it's almost complete. Now you can go on it and turn up to Palehu Road. And I think within the next maybe month, they're going to open the part that hooks into the Hana Highway. So it's getting there slowly. And, if you fly over it, you'll see the dramatic changes on the ground. Along with this site visit, the next day, the Senate committee came out to Hana, which was, very special. It's a long drive, I can tell you that. But it was good to have some of our Oahu and other island senators experience this. They also went up in helicopters to go look at the work of the Maui Invasive Species Committee to get an idea of just how big of an area these guys have to cover. And they showed us this ballistic technology, which basically shoots a very small dosage of herbicide into a plant. I mean, they're going after a very thin stalk of the Myconium. And so, before where they would just spray, now it's going after each individual plant. And they're saying they're using like 1,000th the amount of chemicals that they used before.
Oh, that's terrific.
And they're getting better outcomes. We also then looked at the airport, the Hana airport. We have $19 million of improvements going in there, and we need to do those improvements. We put it in the budget, I think, 2 years ago, and we're just waiting for the governor to release those monies. So the airport administrators were showing us the plans of what they plan to do, how they plan to deal with, modernizing Hana Airport, rebuilding the infrastructure there for FAA certification, and then realigning the runway a little bit to avoid. We have the Pilani Trail. So, it actually cuts right at the back end of the airport. So if they just realign it a little, it'll preserve that whole trail section. Then we went down to Hana Pier and looked at that was I could see the Oahu and Big Island senators looking at this going, okay, now we get it. Standing on a condemned pier that's looking at everything after driving in on the road, seeing our airport, and then they said, okay, we have to work on the pier. So it was a good day out in Hana.
Great.
and then earlier this summer, when the governor was out of town, our own Shansitsui was acting governor, and among the things that he did do was release money for the new Central Maui Park
Yes.
that he started. I put a little bit more money in, and with your help, I think we have enough money now to get started on that park. Then a few days later, Mayor Arakawa announced that the county also had entered into a deal with A&B to purchase more parklands. So I think Kahului, the whole Central Valley, is going to have a lot of parklands to benefit our kids in the future, and hopefully, those projects will get going quickly.
Yeah, you can never have enough parkland because the population is growing, and we really want to get kids out and moving, and their parents enjoying that as well. So it's nice that we've got some new facilities coming online.
One other issue that when we went out to Hana was, going over all of the bridges, they got to see just how bad the bridges are.
Yes.
And then I took them actually to county projects past Hana. The county's replaced a number of bridges, and they've done a very good job of it. So we went to see a completed bridge, and of course it looks like the old bridge. So it was built, new bridge, but it looks like a bridge from 1910. One lane, small, it looks like the original bridge, but it's brand new. Then we went to see the one above Hamua Kaholopo'o, which is, there's no bridge. They took out the old bridge. They're putting in the new one. So we got to see what that means, how they have to divert traffic, how they're working on it, which I hope helps our senators to understand, the complexities of all of our bridges, because we're going to have to start replacing a lot of bridges on all the islands. Our infrastructure is on average about 100 years old.
And I think we got to commend the county for the way they're working on improving the infrastructure and taking advantage, being a little bit more innovative in how they access federal money. In Central Maui, for example, David Good and Rowena Dagdag from Public Works are using federal money now to rebuild the main collector roads, Papa, Kamehameha, Wakea. So that's why you're seeing a lot of work happening now, and people are surprised by how smooth those roads are getting. And I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised because they're actually building the road from the bottom up. I mean, these roads, when they were built to different standards that were in effect 20 years ago. And so over time, they've just been repaved again and again without really putting in the kind of infrastructure that we expect now in our roads.
See, and that's the exact same issue at the Kahului Airport. It was built in the 40s during World War II, and the substructure is giving way. So every time a plane lands and hits that asphalt, it sort of pancakes out. And that's exactly what we're going to have to do at the airport, is go down to the subsurface, rebuild it to handle the pressure of the airplanes. And that's why it's such a huge project. But if we do it and we do it right, it should last us for a very long time.
And that's our lifeline to Honolulu, the other islands, to the mainland, and that's how we get a lot of our goods and services. And it's really central to our economy, so we've got to make sure that project continues to move forward and stays on target.
I think earlier this summer too, I think Senator English and I were able to tour Honolulu Harbor to look at some of the projects, and I think you can talk a little bit about that.
Well, it was a fascinating tour because we had set up the tour before the molasses spill, and it came. The tour happened shortly after the molasses spill, so we got to see where it happened and how it happened. But we also got to see just how important it is to have the infrastructure in place here. We have a just-in-time delivery system, which means they bring in the ship, they offload it. It doesn't stay in a warehouse. It goes right onto the trucks and out to the stores. So, if something backs up, all the movement of goods backs up as well. So we got to see a very fascinating system of how the tugboats, go through the harbor, how they stack, different companies would stack these huge containers. And they said, okay, one company told us that on average it's 20 minutes per truck to come in. In other words, when a truck shows up for one particular container, they have to know exactly where the container is, have everything moved and ready to go. The truck comes in, by radio frequency, they know where to go. The thing is, the container's waiting, it's put onto the truck and out. I mean, a marvelous piece of engineering and computerization and tracking every single piece.
Yeah, and we saw how they actually used the space they had.
Right.
Because I think some have a
up
little bit larger space, and so they have a little different operation. But those that have really small spaces really require a lot of precision and efficiency.
Yeah.
Containers stacked 5 high, and they have to move all of it to get to the bottom one.
Yeah, and then how they do, I learned a lot about how they do refrigerated containers.
Yes.
They have things that have to be at a certain temperature, so they have a specific area where all these containers are plugged in and powered up. They have backup power supply in case the grid goes down. They keep everything chilled. So a lot of, it's a part of our infrastructure that the general public doesn't see, but it's really valuable, because if we don't maintain that, and that's why we went down there to look at it, then we start really impacting the economy as things back up. So again, we have a lot of monies in the budget to fix up all of our harbors, including Honolulu Harbor. And part of our goal in going down there was to say, okay, show us what needs to be fixed. Let's see what has been done, and let's see what hasn't, and why hasn't it been done. So I think it was a very productive tour of Honolulu Harbor.
Yeah, that's really one of the kind of thing that we do during the interim. When we're not here, we're looking at following up on laws that we've passed, money that's been expended, thinking about how we can address constituent concerns when we come back into regular session, and really doing the research and the study. I've been on a couple of what I call professional development trips this year, working with NCSL, the National Conference of State Legislatures, trying to learn more about the Affordable Care Act, how it impacts us, some of the other commerce and consumer protection measures that the Congress is dealing with, how the other states are reacting. So it's an opportunity for us to learn from others and not have to reinvent the wheel, as well as going on the site visits just to see how things that we've passed, projects that we've funded, are getting taken care of in our own backyard.
Yeah, and that is a major part of our work during the interim. In fact, I think every single senator, every single House member does this, where this is where we follow up and say, okay, is it actually being done?
Mm-hmm.
Did the monies that we appropriate make it to that program? And then we follow up and make the calls and say, well, what happened? Where is it? And sometimes you get the pleasant surprise and go, oh, it's done, and it's done the way we intended, and thank you very much. But here we are in the special session, and so we're geared back up. We're in full swing and dealing with all of the issues that are before us in this session, also taking up all of the appointments. So that's why the Senate has a little bit, our committees are actually activated because the Senate confirms and not the House, and so they will just deal with the bills and the collective bargaining issues. We're dealing with the appointments as well.
I kind of ran out of questions, so we can talk about anything you want to bring up right now.
Well, I think going into next session, for the regular session, like the three of us, we start planning now. We talk about what things that the Maui County as a whole needs, what do our district needs, things that affect like the airport, harbors, hospitals, all of these things. This is the time that we look at it. So, we're starting to put our bills together, and if anybody has, we're getting calls already from constituents saying, what about this and what about that, and let's try a bill, like this. So I have another one where, what do they call those things? It's not a dirt bike, but it has four wheels.
The quads.
The quads, where, the ranchers.
ATVs.
The ranchers in upcountry, they don't use horses
it's
anymore.
the new horses.
Right,
Right,
it's a new
right.
horse. But we have a restriction for them going on the roads. And they're saying, look, we have to cross the roads to get to
another pasture.
to get to the other pasture. And so how do we, legally we can't do
Yeah.
this. So we're working on some language to try and help them to, use this in their work, but also cross the government roads.
Yeah, because it's a very strange thing, because I think they've been told that they would have to cross a road, they would need to put it on a trailer and then drive it over, even though they're
It's
just
right over
moving,
the road.
the gate is right across from where they are.
Wow.
So they can just, and for the most part, it doesn't make sense to require them to do that.
Yeah, so we're looking at a bill to help them out with that.
There's another example of how modern technology or changing practices require changes in the statute. And people say, well, you guys always seem to be tweaking this and tweaking that. Well, times change, technology changes, procedures change, and you need to keep up with that to make sure that everything proceeds rather smoothly. So I know, we'll be having informational meetings, back in the district, asking people to come share with us if they have any issues or concerns that, we can start to take a look at. But, the other thing is meeting with the departments. The Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs is under my committee's jurisdiction, and so I want to meet with them to see, how the detective and guards new registration is going and how we can improve it, make it better on a going forward basis. Or meeting with the PUC that's looking at some of the net metering and other regulatory processes to help the utility as well as the consumer sort of move into a more distributed grid and take more clean energy, renewable energy. So there's a lot of things that are sort of ongoing, and I guess the idea for me is just to keep things moving forward, getting as much public input, and then trying to, when the session comes in, trying to make the best policy that we can to help in a short period of time, to help whatever issue is on the table.
What I'm surprised about is that since we all live in our communities, We don't spend as much time here on Oahu, so I'm always surprised by how these issues come up when you're, shopping at Long's or at Safeway. And I know that the solar issue has been something that a lot of people are bringing up to me because, Kahului has the potential of having a lot of distributed energy, but a lot of people are having a lot of issues with getting connected. And I think you're seeing it now where even the solar installers, I think, are concerned now with the way that Maui Electric and Hawaiian Electric are processing it. And I think we all understand that there are some engineering issues and there are some processing issues, but it does seem that we need to take a real close look at how we can better allow people to take advantage of the location.
Right. I mean, look at upcountry. Look at that area where we have high solar penetration, and the grids are full. So I'm often getting calls by people saying, I want to put in solar, I have the financing for it, but the electric company said no. Or they said, you need to do an interconnect study that's going to cost $3,000 initially, and then we'll tell you how much it's going to cost to add in the equipment to make it work. But I think a lot of this was triggered recently by a change in internal policy within the electric company that sort of put the solar companies in a very hard position because, as I understand it, they said, here's our projects in line. They give them preliminary, yes, go ahead with it. They start with the contract, and then if they give you the preliminary, generally you get the final. What they said is, well, we can't guarantee anything until the final.
Well, actually, Maui Electric has taken a little bit different stance, and so the Oahu guys are going, how come, it can't be a little bit more opened up like Maui has. On Oahu, they have some circuits that are over 100% penetration for minimum daytime load, and that gets to be a little problematic because you want to make sure that there's reliability. So I think on Maui, they've actually opened up more of the circuits and are allowing groups to hui up to do that interconnect study, so they get a better sense earlier about where they can connect, how they can connect. But there's still some issues, and so I was really happy to meet with one of our wind farms who's looking to go into solar, talking about they have a proposal and they're working with MECO to develop a new generation plant that will get us off of the old, very dirty, very expensive kahului generators and allow us over the next several years to actually be much more stable and develop a grid that will be able to take more renewable energy. So I was happy to see that, this is going forward. So we're making some progress in that area.
Excellent. Senators, thank you so much for your time and joining us again. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us on this episode of Maui Manao. Aloha and mahalo. Thank you.